Hi, Frank. Welcome to the show. Really, really excited to have you here. I've known you for a few years, for many years actually, and I'm super thrilled that you're here because, in my view, your experience is the quintessential American dream without the cliche, with all the struggles and the victories that can mean. So let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit about Opscheck. What is it exactly?
Opscheck is a tool that really becomes a central repository to keep track of all the work that's done in order to manage your business. That's sort of the high level, dumb it down, quick explanation of it. So if you're working in a financial firm, and when I say operations, I'm talking about anything outside of traders or portfolio managers. Everything flows down from there. So trading operations, processing settlements, you got the accounting groups that are processing all the trades and transactions and calculating NAVs. You have compliance teams that are abiding by all the SEC rules and regulations, or perhaps FINRA. You have investor relations or client service, making sure they're being taken care of. So these are sort of the departments that are part of the operations infrastructure, and they all have their deadlines and their jobs and their tasks and processes. And what Auscheck does is it becomes a central repository to keep track of all that, to make sure that every job, every task, every process is being performed by the people that are supposed to be doing it. So you're promoting accountability. You're not missing any deadlines. Management has clear oversight and transparency as to what's happening. If there are any problems or issues in completing that work, it can all be documented. Backup documentation and evidence can be attached. So once again, clear transparency and oversight enhanced from any tool you may have today. And right now, the tool we're replacing mainly are spreadsheets, which isn't really any competition. So that's sort of what we do. And there's a lot of benefits that come from doing something like that. It's not only the what you could save in financially by finding an error, you're preventing the loss of money, loss of reputation if you report bad numbers. Obviously, that's a big hit on your reputation. If you're not abiding by the policies of the SEC, they could block your doors up. But there's more than that. Now you go through audits, you go through regulatory examinations, you go through due diligence meetings with clients and investors. Having Opscheck will always enhance that. It'll leave a very positive connotation as to the command you have of running your business. So there's a lot of good reasons to.
It's basically a workflow management software. Is it located on local servers or is it somewhere in the cloud? How does that work?
So it's what you call a SaaS solution, software as a service. So it's cloud based. We also have our SOC 2, which is an independent auditor coming in and saying we have the highest standards, controls, and procedures. And it's sort of a hybrid. I don't even know the best way to describe it. I often say it's a hybrid. It's part task management, project management, and workflow built into one. You may want to call it an operations platform because there's a lot of other things we can do in there. So basically, it's a way to keep everybody organized, on point, accountable, with clear transparency and oversight capabilities.
Tell us a little bit about your past, what you were doing before you started your company at the very beginning of your entrepreneur career.
Sure. So prior to that, I had a pretty long career in financial operations. I was on what they call the sell side early in my career, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America. But then back in the 90s, I jumped onto the buy side. Very fortunate to get into what was considered the premier hedge fund at the time, Tiger Management. I was there for 8 years. I was the head of global operations. And it was such a great experience. I was surrounded by such smart people. I felt privileged to be there. I learned a lot. And it kind of set me on my way of having a lot more confidence to do what I eventually did much later on. So I ran global operations for two major hedge funds, Tiger Management, as well as Highbridge Capital. I've also been the COO and CCO for a few smaller hedge fund managers. So a lot of operations experience that gave me the idea of launching Opscheck.
So why in the world did you start your own company while you were in a good position? You were making, I'm sure, really reasonable money and in a good environment. What made you make the plunge into entrepreneurship, basically?
So I got the idea back at Highbridge, back in 2006, 2008, in that time period. So when I walked in the door, they had about 8 billion of assets under management. And within 2 years, over 30 billion. Now that's incredible growth. You don't really hear about things like that very often, but it was really because JP Morgan had purchased Highbridge. So when I walked in there, they only had about 25 people I was responsible for, and it quickly grew to about 50 people, mainly in New York, but also in Hong Kong and London. And it was getting to be very challenging to really wrap your arms around everything that was going on. We were hiring people, we were creating new processes, they were launching new funds, hiring people. It was challenging. So when I went to the CTO and asked, is there any tool out there that could really help me, as I say, wrap my arms around everything that's going on, the managers that reported to me, giving them an easy tool, just to make sure that all the hard work we put into coming up with controls and procedures to make sure nothing fails were actually being implemented. And he really didn't have a good answer. So I kind of stored that in the back of my mind. And then obviously it, whatever we had worked anyway. But I just thought it would be great to have a tool like that. So now, fast forward a few years later, I was the COO of a global macro hedge fund, but I only had three people working for me. It was sort of a startup. And I realized that even though there was only three people, you're putting on different hats during the day, whether you're working on operations, items, compliance, accounting, investor relations. You're putting on different hats during the day and performing different jobs. So I thought, the tool I was thinking about at Highbridge would work well for a small firm as well. So when that hedge fund eventually closed down due to poor performance and redemptions of capital, I decided it was a good time in my life to take a shot at something on my own. So I went out, I bootstrapped it, and I hired a development firm, and gave them the specs of what I was looking for, and they built me Opscheck.
Wow. Well, that's very gutsy to do that, starting Opscheck. What was like the biggest obstacle at the very beginning of this endeavor?
I would say the main obstacle was just getting into something I've never done before. I've always, even being a part of a startup, I was never really the last person or final person that had to live and die by every decision. I had big responsibilities in my prior positions, but this was something completely on my own. So I would say that fortunately, I didn't have any major obstacles or failures along the way because I think I had that, here and there during the course of my career where I tried to be very thoughtful and slow in implementing new things. So I would say the major obstacle was just going down a road I'd never been down before. So I started off pretty mildly. I went to a couple of people I knew in the industry and I said, hey, I built this tool. What do you think of the idea? And would you be nice enough to beta test it for me? And as they were working on it, they said, hey, this seems to be a pretty good idea. I could use something like this. So I just went out and got my clients one at a time and took my time and built it from there.
Is this oriented specifically for the financial industry?
Yes, there are other generic products that are out there, billion-dollar capitalized companies, but they try to be all things to all industries. Because I had all this experience and because all my clients are really an extension to my product development team, which really means they're giving me requests of features that they think would help them and enhance the product. Yeah, we are the specialists in the financial industry. I don't come across anybody that has the same background, the same features that we have in Opscheck to fulfill this industry. So I don't try to go out to the pharmaceuticals companies or manufacturing, and we want to be the experts in the financial sector. So originally, I was looking at hedge funds because that's my background, but very quickly we just put that out to private equity, venture capitalists, traditional asset managers, as well as sell side firms. We have service providers, we have family offices, consulting firms, all different types of financial industries use it. Fund administrators now are using Opscheck. So anyone under the umbrella of a financial firm, Opscheck is a tool for.
Can you share with us a pivotal moment that you remember that was critical in your success?
Well, like many entrepreneurs or people starting their own business, the first couple of years when you're not making money, you're wondering, do I have a real business or is this a very expensive hobby? But it wasn't that many years, only just 2, maybe 3 years where we were actually profitable. So I would say never really a big spike. I would say we're just spiking now, but or the last couple of years, it's been a slow, steady upward trend. I would say the significant points were when we had our first big update in the user interface, what we call Opscheck 2.0, and then again early last year when we had a significant change to the application where we introduced 2 additional levels in the organizational hierarchy. So I would say those were the 2 big ones. And then, the last year or so, we've really started to attract bigger type of clients. So we can really help clients of any size, small, medium, large. I think when you go through a demo of Opscheck, it's very clear why a bigger organization would need it and want it. A small organization, I think it's just as useful as I gave that indication early on when I said putting on different hats during the, when I had only 3 people working for me. So smaller organizations, it's things like key man risk. When you have a small business, either a startup to a 35-year firm, we only have maybe 10 people, 15 people in the firm. There's very few people in the organization that really have the in-depth knowledge of everything that needs to be done to successfully run your business. Opscheck helps you build sort of a digital diagram of what that operational infrastructure looks like. It takes away that fear of the infamous bus hitting somebody in the morning and they never show up again. And what the heck are you going to do? It's often used as an analogy. What would we do without Bob, so to speak? So that's one big thing it does. It certainly mitigates your key man risk for small companies. It gives you an institutional look very quickly, and it's very impressive. What small companies are always doing is trying to grow. So whether you're an investment management firm trying to raise more assets, or some kind of a service provider that's trying to acquire more clients, this certainly would leave a very positive connotation that you guys got great command of your operations. So those are the reasons why the smaller ones would certainly benefit by it. The bigger ones, it's pretty obvious. You're going to have operations spread out to different locations, hundreds, if not thousands of people in order to organize everything, have management, have clear oversight, transparency with one department to another. So open that communication and collaboration. I could talk for an hour about all these things, but any any financial firm would benefit by it.
How do you go about with the onboarding step with Opscheck? How's that working out?
Something we developed over time, obviously, right? We was first couple of years trying to figure out what the heck you're doing. So basically, it all starts off with a demo. Once you give a demo, most people are usually, a lot of people are very impressed from the first time they see it, at a minimum, intrigued. So after a demo, hopefully they'll agree. We offer a pretty generous free trial or proof of concept period. 4 to 6 weeks, you should have a good idea of whether this is something you want to move forward with. So it's the demo, it's getting them into a proof of concept. We help them populate everything and give them examples on how to start creating tasks and workflows and simple follow-ups and reminders, alerts. And it's a pretty intuitive tool that you can really pick up on it very quickly. So that's usually the process. And then we try to stay in touch within that proof of concept period and then, send them a contract.
It must be fairly difficult for any company to transfer from one system to another. Do you find that you've kind of developed a successful approach to really facilitate onboarding, the transferring from one technology to another. And then, by the way, what's the main technology the financial institutions you work with before getting to use Opscheck?
At least 95%, maybe higher, 99%. They don't have another tool. They're basically trying to track their work they're doing on a very antiquated process by using a spreadsheet. Now, we all know an Excel spreadsheet was one of the greatest things ever invented, but it really wasn't meant for, you know, tracking the work that's being done by everybody on the team. Introducing Opscheck and selling it is sort of a double-edged sword because, you know, on the one hand, you know, the downside is having a short window of time to introduce a product that people have not seen before. I really don't have any competitors in the industry. As I said earlier, are there big generic tools out there? Yes, there's a few of them that have a recognizable name, but nobody really uses it much in the financial industry. So, so that's the downside and the opportunity all in one, because you're trying to introduce to somebody something they've never seen before, but I know they can use it. So having that small window of time of explaining it and hopefully transferring that idea to them is the challenge. The upside is, or the big upside is, I don't really have a competitor. When you see Opscheck and you say, should I do this on Opscheck or an Excel spreadsheet? There's not really any competition. That's sort of like, the upside and downside of what I'm doing right now. It's just trying to get the word out there in masses. Here's another example. Today, you may be familiar with an acronym called the CRM. The CRM is a client relationship management tool. The biggest one out there would be Salesforce. And there's a few others that are out there. But today it's an acronym because somebody decided back in the 90s to build one. It was a good idea. And then all of a sudden they had competitors, and now it's a thing. It's an acronym. It's not a client related, it's a CRM. It's the same thing with these trading systems. They call them OMS, which is for order management systems. And once again, until somebody started building one, and then others realized this is a good idea, I'm going to build my own. And now it's a thing. It's an OMS. So if I told you today I'm selling a CRM or an OMS, easily people are going to realize, okay, I know what that is. Tell me why you're better. But what I'm trying to sell is something that they can't easily relate it to something else. So that's a little bit of the challenge. But once again, once they see it, they're usually like, this is a pretty good idea. I could use something like this.
Fantastic. So getting them to see the demo is absolutely critical for you.
Yes. I would say lead generation is probably the biggest obstacle. Most of my clients that I have today, or the leads that I have today, are coming from people that heard about Opscheck from friends or acquaintances in the industry, or which is even makes me feel better or more complimentary to the tool, are that people that have used it in one firm now going to a new firm and introducing it to them and them saying, hey, yeah, let's take a look at this as well. And I've been very successful where people have moved from one firm to another.
So interesting. It's a bit like going from horse riding to the Model T. A lot of people were saying, why would I want a car? I'm doing fine with my horses. But once you try it, then you never go back.
One of the things that really solidified that I was on the right track is early on, somebody gifted me with a book called The Checklist Manifesto. And the whole thesis of the book really is that checklists are so important. He was emphasizing in aviation, in the medical field, in the engineering field, it's so important that you follow these critical checklists because let's face it, you know, the operating room, if you don't do it, that could be deadly. The same thing, you're constructing a bridge. You don't do things the right way. You're flying these jets across the world. So it's obvious how if you don't follow those strict checklists, that it could be catastrophic. Well, in the financial industry, we're not saving lives, but the consequences of failures can be pretty brutal. I mean, you can lose your job. The firm could lose millions of dollars. The firm could lose their reputation if you report bad numbers. Regulators could come in and lock your doors. They're pretty significant. So why wouldn't you, want to track and make sure that all procedures and controls and policies that you put in place in order to protect the business from these failures, why wouldn't you want to track that as well? That's Opscheck. Plenty of firms. I worked at Tiger Management. We had a lot of controls and procedures. We hired great people, and there were no major failures. A lot of firms go without any major failures, or they have them and they're able to just deal with it. But the fact that there is something now, why would you not at least want to look at it and use something like that? As I said, with all the things that preventing the operational failures, the reputation, not losing money, protecting yourselves against regulators, you also have clients and investors that want to see that you're going out there and finding the best tools available to protect the firm. If you do have a regulatory examination, they want to see the commitment you've made to making sure all the SEC policies or FINRA policies are being taken seriously and tracked. I mean, auditors, they audit your firm for your SOC 2 to show you have the highest standards of controls and procedures to run your business. I mean, there's a whole list of benefits you get, I believe, by using Opscheck. So it's not just saving money or preventing the failures or keeping people accountable. It's all of that, plus the other things I just had mentioned. In some ways, I think it's a no-brainer. That's why I feel pretty passionate about what I do, because for all the benefits you can get for a tool that it's really a modest effort to use. If I was going to say you can get those benefits, but it's going to cost somebody, an hour and a half, each person an hour and a half each day, then you're going to say, well, I don't know if I have that extra time, right? But this is really for any one individual after you onboard it and you get yourself set up, which isn't a hard lift either. But the modest effort it takes to use it and to stay active on it and use it as an oversight tool is really very minimal. So with the benefits you get for a modest effort at what I believe, of course I would believe this, but at a very reasonable price, why would you not do this? So
Can Opscheck accommodate specific tailored functionalities that are really unique to some organizations or institutions or companies?
that is a great question, and I'm sorry I didn't think of that myself. It's fully customizable. We deliver a blank slate that's so flexible that we can adapt to the way you do your business. We're not trying to tell you how to do your business. We're complementing the way you do your business. You can do your work the way you want to do it. You can use your own jargon. You can use your own frequencies of when you want to get done, your approval process, your notifications, your reminders, your alerts. You're going to customize it the way that you feel it's appropriate for your business.
So, Frank, how do you maintain your motivation and determination, especially when facing challenges in the competitive financial tech industry?
Although we've been very successful, we've been on a steady upward climb since we started. I still sometimes can't believe why not everyone's using Opscheck. I know that sounds a little crazy because to me it's a no-brainer, and that's why I'm still very motivated with doing this. So here we have a tool that can track every job, task, process that's being performed, keep everyone accountable in one central repository with complete oversight by management. And by having that, you could prevent financial loss, reputational loss. I mean, if you report bad numbers, you're in big trouble. Keep the regulators happy. And then there's so many additional benefits with doing that. When you go through an audit, when you go through a due diligence meeting with an investor or a client, if you go through a regulatory examination, it's certainly going to leave a positive connotation with any of those outside stakeholders. So you take the prevention of all those failures, combined with the positive connotation, add that to the control and oversight that management now has for a modest effort to use it on a daily basis, to me is a no-brainer.
When you started the company, have you had mentors, people who were very influential in helping you bring the company to success?
I'm not going to name his name. He's a pretty modest guy, but I can give you an example. So the point is, he taught me how to look at things a little differently. So not to get into too much of the minutia here, but if you're in an operations, let's say for a hedge fund, we have these transactions called these trades that are done. And you know, when you think of a trade, you probably think of somebody buying or selling IBM, but there's all sorts of investments that you can make. And some of them go by what they call backed by an ISDA agreement. It's an acronym, ISDA. And these are pretty complicated transactions compared to buying and selling IBM. So we spend a lot of man hours reconciling all these types of transactions, and it's tedious. And I had a conversation with him one day, and he said to me, I was trying to explain to him that this takes a lot of time and it's tedious. And he turned around and said to me, he goes, well, what if you don't reconcile them at all? And I'm like, what do you mean? You have to do that. But when I left his office and I thought about what he was saying, it you know, a light came on, and basically what he was trying to tell me, or well, the lesson I got out of that was it worth all those man hours to do that job? In other words, how many errors do you actually find when you do that? Was it worth, you know, one error once a month or once a week? What would that financial loss have been versus all the man hours you put into it? So it really had me look at things a little differently, the effort versus the risk and things of that nature. So that was pretty significant. And as a side note, we did stop reconciling those items because they were very important. But the point got across, and something that I learned from him. So you know, you would call him sort of a mentor for me. But I was already pretty seasoned when I started the business. I didn't go into the business thinking I knew everything, but at least I knew not to run as fast as I can and try to, you know, do a walk and a slow jog before I ran.
For those who are watching right now who are thinking of launching something, startup, entrepreneurship is perhaps an avenue they're considering, what type of advice would you give them to inspire them?
I would say a couple things. Don't be afraid and talk to as many people as you can. Get as much information as you can, you know, before you jump in. But once you jump in, you know, just work your butt off. I still do. You know, I'm kind of an older guy in the industry, but I put a lot of hours in, but I find it very rewarding. I enjoy talking to people all over the world. Our clients go as far as Australia, South Africa, Hong Kong, India, Canada. We're all over the world, and I enjoy that stuff. But you're going to work hard. If you want to go into your own business and want it to be successful, you have to put the hours in, but talk to as many people as you can, and don't be afraid. And maybe timing. It was the right time for me in my life and in my career.
In closing, I really like what you just said. You said, talk to people, ask them questions, get information. That's a very good advice. Is that something that you're still doing? Do you talk to people in your industry to see what the trends are, what's upcoming, so that you can adapt your product?
Oh, yeah. I talk to people all the time, and it doesn't matter. I can learn something from somebody that has 30 years experience as well as somebody that has 15 years experience. It all depends what they're doing, who they are, and what the topic is. But yeah, I continue to talk to people all the time, get some advice. Everybody likes to give advice or opinions, and you have to decipher what you think works and is applicable for you and your business, and what isn't.
Looking towards the future, what are your goals for Opscheck for the upcoming years?
I believe we crossed the critical spot last year when we implemented, as I said earlier, that two additional levels of in the organizational hierarchy. And until you get a demo, that might not mean that much, but if you actually see, and we were already well positioned, as I said, for small, medium, and large firms. Now we're going after the really big ones, and, you know, or large or larger firms. So the last couple of clients we signed up was a pretty major fund administrator, as well as a pretty major private equity firm. So both of them having hundreds of users and potentially going over 1,000 or more. So we're well positioned for that. I'll never turn down a client. I'll turn down. I'll talk to a startup and just as enthusiastically as I would a big client, because you never know where that goes. You never know who their friends are, who they tell, or what part of an industry group they're part of that can introduce it elsewhere. So we're signing on all different sizes and types of clients. but I see us making a bigger impact on the larger clients the next couple of years.
Well, thank you very much, Frank, for being on the Success channel today. Really appreciate it. What's the website that they can find more about Opscheck?
Sure. It's easy. I was pretty lucky. I got the easy domain name, ops, check, CHECK.com. There's no hard sell with this. I mean, that's why we give a pretty generous, trial period, a proof of concept, because we're not trying to rush anyone into anything. We want you to be comfortable. There's no commitment in doing a proof of concept, but I think there's going to be so many benefits that it'll be worthwhile.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Frank. That was awesome. I really appreciate your time on the Success channel and all the best for the future.
Thank you very much.